I'm Sophia Carter, 32 years old, and I live in the heart of Chicago. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, far from it. My mother worked long hours at 2 different jobs, struggling to make ends meet. There were days when I'd fall asleep to the sound of her typing away on the computer, trying to finish a report for her second job. I remember the cold nights when the heat wasn't working, and we'd huddle together for warmth under a thin blanket that barely did the job. Growing up, I was always told I could be anything I wanted to be, but it didn't feel that simple. The world around me didn't look like it had a place for people like us. People who had nothing but determination and a dream. I never let that stop me. In fact, it only fueled me more. I hated the idea of living paycheck to paycheck, of feeling like I was stuck in a loop I couldn't break. I knew I had to find a way out, to build a life where I didn't have to struggle anymore. But it wasn't easy. It never is, right? I remember working at every job I could find, fast food, retail, you name it. I hated it. But I knew it was temporary, that every hour I spent on my feet, every rejection I faced when I applied for better positions, was just a step closer to something bigger. I would go home exhausted, every bone in my body aching, but there was a fire inside me that never went out. I wasn't going to be one of those people who just accepted life as it came. I was going to change my fate no matter what. So here I am today, self-made, successful, and still fighting for more. But it wasn't handed to me. Every rejection, every failure, they've shaped who I am now. Before I proceed, kindly subscribe, turn on the notification, and comment where you're watching from. A woman who believes in herself, even when the world tries to tell her she isn't enough. And I'm still here, chasing that dream, because I know that success isn't just about making money, it's about never giving up. I remember the day I took the leap. It was a decision I had to make, no matter how terrifying it was. I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of whether to stick with my secure, but soul-crushing job or gamble everything on an idea I truly believed in. An online tech startup. It sounded like a dream, one that could change my life, but the odds were against me and I knew it. But I had something more powerful than money or connections. A mentor. His name was Greg. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself yet. He believed I could do it even when I doubted. He was the one who gave me the loan to get started, a small one, but it was enough to launch. He told me, "You've got the vision. Now make it happen." I still remember the early days. Sitting in my tiny apartment, juggling multiple part-time jobs to keep the lights on, while working late into the night on my business. I barely slept, barely ate. Every day felt like a marathon, and every step forward felt like I was pulling myself out of quicksand. I failed prototypes, I burned through my savings, and at one point I thought I was done. But every failure pushed me harder. I refused to give up. This was my shot, and I wasn't going to waste it. The turning point came after I launched my first product. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was innovative and I knew it. Slowly, people started to take notice. Small businesses, startups, even individuals saw the value in what I had created. The buzz started to grow and I could feel it. I was on the verge of something big. Over the years, the business expanded. I attracted investors, some with deep pockets, others who just believed in the vision as much as I did. They saw my product, they saw my determination, and they jumped on board. With each new investment, my confidence grew, and so did my business. We went global. Our product became a household name. Every tech-savvy person in the world had it. But it wasn't just about the product. It was about me, the relentless drive, the hours I put in, the sacrifices. I became the face of my brand. People started to admire me, to see me as a symbol of success. They talked about me like I was some kind of business goddess. I was invited to high-profile events, and the spotlight became familiar. My social media exploded. I posted pictures from private jets, my multi-million-dollar homes, luxury dinners, and exclusive events. It was the life I dreamed of, more than I ever thought possible. Yet, as I sat in the penthouse suite overlooking the skyline, I couldn't help but feel an odd sense of emptiness. On the outside, everything was perfect. But beneath it all, the pressure was mounting, and the people who admired me from afar. Some of them envied me, others saw me as a target. It wasn't just about the tech anymore. It was about the persona. And that persona? It came with its own set of challenges. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't slow down. I had worked too hard to get here. It was at one of those high-profile business events where I first met David. He was different from everyone else there, sharp, confident, but not in an arrogant way. There was a calm energy about him, something grounded. I had been surrounded by so many people over the years, all pretending to care, all trying to get something from me. But with David, I felt something real. He wasn't just impressed by my success. He respected it. We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. He had this way of making me feel heard, like my struggles, my victories, and all the hard work I put in actually mattered to someone. It was refreshing. And it didn't take long for me to realize that I was drawn to him. He wasn't just charming, he was authentic. And for someone like me who had spent most of her life fighting to be seen for more than just the successful entrepreneur, that was rare. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind. David was always there, whether at dinner after a stressful day or supporting me during important meetings, offering advice when I needed it, or simply making me laugh when I forgot how to. He became my confidant, someone I could talk to without worrying about the pressure of appearances. There was something about him that made me feel safe, something that allowed me to open up in ways I hadn't before. I told him about the late nights spent alone in my apartment, how I felt like I was losing myself to the business, how I feared losing everything I had built. I shared the weight of being the face of a brand, of constantly needing to prove myself. And David listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix me. He just listened, and somehow that was enough. I felt seen, not just for the company I built, but for who I truly was underneath it all. It wasn't long before we became a couple. It wasn't just the business that clicked for us. It was everything. We balanced each other out, complementing each other in ways that felt natural. People started to refer to us as the power duo, and at first I was flattered. David and I were unstoppable, at least that's how it felt. In him, I had found someone who understood the highs and lows of my world. We were in love, and for a while, that love felt like the anchor I needed amidst the chaos of my life. I let my guard down with him. I trusted him, probably more than I had trusted anyone. And that was the beginning of a new chapter. I thought I had finally found my person, someone who could stand by me through the storm. But I was wrong. As time went on, David and I became inseparable, not just in our personal lives but in the business as well. He had his own talents, his own strengths, and I was more than happy to bring him on board. He took charge of operations, made decisions that allowed me to focus on expanding our brand. I trusted him completely, and I was grateful. After all, I had someone who understood the weight of the decisions I had to make. For the first time, I didn't have to do it all alone. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't see through the fog of trust and love, was that David wasn't working with me. He was working on me. It started small, at first, just little comments, subtle hints that maybe the people around me weren't as trustworthy as I thought. "Do you really think Vanessa has your best interests at heart?" he'd ask. Or, "You can't trust someone who still holds you to your past mistakes." The things he said weren't obvious at first, just questions that made me think. But over time they started to gnaw at me. David made it seem like he was only trying to protect me, to keep me from getting hurt by people who didn't have my back. It was the perfect manipulation. No accusation, just a quiet suggestion that I needed to be careful. Slowly, he planted seeds of doubt in my mind about my colleagues, my partners, even my closest friends. He convinced me that I couldn't rely on anyone else, that I was the only one who could make the decisions that would keep my business on top. At first, I didn't question it. I thought it was just his protective nature. He loved me after all. But looking back, I see it now. He was isolating me, cutting me off from the people who had been there from the beginning. And when I was completely alone in my decision-making, that's when he struck. David convinced me to take risks. "Trust me," he would say, "this is the next big move. It'll set us up for life." He presented every idea with such confidence that I believed him without question. I was on top of the world, surrounded by success, and I wanted to keep rising. The decisions he pushed me to make, decisions that only benefited him, seemed like no-brainers at the time. Risky investments, a big shift in product direction, changes to the company structure. Every suggestion seemed to come from a place of care, from a place of wanting to see us thrive. I was blinded by the trust one had placed in him, and I didn't see the cracks forming until they were too deep. David's influence grew stronger, and I felt more and more dependent on him. His presence became a fixture in the business, and I leaned on him to handle the financials. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that while I trusted him with everything, he was slowly stripping me of it all. The theft began quietly. David had the access he needed. He had worked his way into every corner of the company. Money started disappearing from accounts. At first, it was small amounts, just enough to go unnoticed. But then it escalated. He manipulated the stock market, moving money around, making risky investments with my company's funds. I never questioned it because everything looked perfect on the surface. The business was growing, the investors were happy, and I was too focused on scaling up to see the damage he was causing beneath it all. David's role as my partner gave him the perfect cover. He played the part of the supportive lover, the ideal business partner. On the outside, he was everything I could have wanted. A man who was with me every step of the way, supporting my vision, making me feel secure. But inside, he was slowly unraveling everything I had worked for. By the time I started to notice the discrepancies, it was too late. The damage had already been done. I thought I was building an empire. What I was really doing was watching my world fall apart, one small lie at a time. It started with the smallest of inconsistencies, things that didn't seem to add up. It was nothing major at first, just a few figures that didn't quite match in the reports, a transaction that seemed a little off, a discrepancy in the numbers during one of our quarterly audits. I dismissed it at first. After all, I had so much going on, and it was easy to overlook a few minor errors in the sea of financial data that passed through my hands daily. But as time went on, the little discrepancies began to pile up, forming a pattern I couldn't ignore. Then came the tip. An anonymous email that popped into my inbox one night. No name, just a message. David is playing you. Check the company's books. My heart raced as I read the words. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but something in the back of my mind told me it wasn't. That night I dug deeper. I went through the books line by line, every transaction, every account, looking for something, anything, that could explain the growing unease gnawing at me. It didn't take long for the truth to start to unravel. The more I looked, the clearer it became. David had been siphoning money from the company, manipulating accounts, and forging documents to cover his tracks. The deeper I dug, the more horrified I became. He had orchestrated a hostile takeover, using my trust and my decisions against me. Every investment, every risk I had taken on his advice, it had all been part of his plan. The company was no longer truly mine. He had been slowly, systematically dismantling it from the inside out. I confronted him the next day, my hands shaking but my voice steady. I demanded answers. What's going on, David? What are you hiding? He played the part of the shocked, betrayed partner. His eyes widened, his mouth opened in disbelief. What are you talking about, Sophia? You're being paranoid. You've been under a lot of pressure lately. Maybe it's time you take a break. He brushed it off like it was nothing, like it was just a bad dream I had imagined. But when I didn't back down, he started to get defensive. You're overreacting. I'm doing this because I care about you. I'm protecting us, protecting you, he said, his voice calm, soothing, almost too soothing. The words hit me like a punch in the gut, but I couldn't let him manipulate me again. No, David. I know what's been happening. You've been stealing from me. From us. I watched as the mask slipped, his confident facade faltering for just a moment, and that was enough to confirm everything I feared. But even then he denied it. He turned it around, making it seem like it was my fault, like I was the one who couldn't handle the pressure. He twisted it so well that for a brief moment I questioned myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was imagining things. But the truth had already started to reveal itself, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I pressed on. I went back to the financial records, cross-referencing everything, digging deeper into the accounts. That's when I found the smoking gun, hidden transfers, offshore accounts, and transactions that led to shell companies. It was all laid out in black and white. The evidence was undeniable. David hadn't just been stealing money. He had been planning his escape from the very beginning. My fortune, my company, my entire life's work, it was all a means to an end for him. He had been using me, manipulating me all along. And as I pieced it all together, I realized how far his betrayal went. Not only had he stolen my money, but he had also stolen my trust, my future, and the life I had worked so hard to build. The person I had loved, the man I had trusted more than anyone, had been playing me from the start. And now, as the walls came crashing down around me, I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered world. The world I had spent years building came crashing down in an instant. One day I was on top, surrounded by success, wealth, and the adoration of everyone around me. The next, I was staring at the rubble of my empire, with nothing left but a trail of betrayal and shattered trust. My heart felt as if it had been ripped out of my chest. Not only had I lost my wealth, the foundation of everything I had worked for, but the man I had trusted most, David, had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. I could hardly breathe, the weight of it all suffocating me. The business I had poured my soul into? Gone. The reputation I had carefully crafted over years of hard work? Tainted. And my heart? Torn apart by the person I had believed would stand by me no matter what. The walls that once held me up now felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating me with the realization that everything I had fought for was a lie. The media wasted no time in seizing the story. The headlines were relentless, painting me as the naive victim of my own success. Self-made billionaire duped by smooth-talking lover. The story was everywhere. The interviews with so-called experts, the gossip-filled news segments, they all had the same narrative. Sophia, the powerful woman, outwitted by the man who pretended to love her. They didn't care about the years I had spent building something from nothing, only the scandal that sold papers and kept people watching. David, on the other hand, was portrayed as the brilliant mastermind. The smooth criminal who had outsmarted me at every turn. I hated that he was getting away with it, that he was still out there living his life while I was left to clean up the mess. But worse than the media's narrative was the public humiliation I faced. Everyone had an opinion, and they weren't afraid to share it. I was a cautionary tale, a victim of my own ambition, and it felt like the whole world was watching as I slowly fell apart. But what cut the deepest was the fact that it wasn't just about the money. It was about the trust, the love, and the future I thought we had built together. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed, not just in business but as a person. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let this happen? Legal battles loomed ahead, and the more I fought to reclaim what was mine, the more I realized that I had lost everything that truly mattered. My business, my trust, my heart, it was all gone. For months I wallowed in despair. The weight of everything I had lost crushed me. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal, of being utterly broken. There were nights I barely slept, wondering how I could have been so foolish. But somewhere deep inside I knew I couldn't stay down forever. I had fought too hard to get to where I was to let it all end in defeat. It started with a simple decision. I was going to fight back. It wasn't going to be easy, and it certainly wasn't going to be quick, but I had learned so much on my journey to the top, and I refused to let it all be taken away. I had rebuilt myself once from nothing, and I was ready to do it again. I started by seeking legal action against David. The trail of his deceit was long, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it. I gathered everything, bank records, emails, documents, anything that could expose his fraud. As I dug deeper into the mess he had left behind, I realized just how far he had gone, and it made me more determined than ever to bring him to justice. I wasn't just fighting for the money I'd lost. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity, my reputation, and my future. Slowly I began to recover what I could. But the legal battle was just one part of my journey. The real work began when I looked around at the pieces of my life, the pieces of my career, and decided to build something new. Something stronger, something that would never be taken away again. This time, I wasn't just going to build a business for the sake of profit. I was going to build something that meant something. I launched a new venture, one that focused on empowering women in business. I wanted to create a company built on trust, transparency, and integrity, values that David had torn away from me. My new mission wasn't just about making money or reclaiming what I had lost. It was about helping others avoid the same mistakes I made. I was going to use my story, my journey of loss and redemption, as a lesson for others. I wanted women to see that even when you hit rock bottom, you can rise again. I wanted them to know that betrayal doesn't have to define you, that you can rebuild stronger than before. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew there would be challenges, but I had learned something vital through everything I'd been through. My success wasn't defined by money or business deals. It was defined by my resilience, by my ability to rise again when life knocked me down. And this time, I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to thrive. In the end, I learned the most important lesson of all, that no matter how much you lose, no one can take away your sense of self-worth unless you let them. Yes, I lost everything, my wealth, my business, my trust in the one person I thought I could count on. But through all of it, I discovered something far more valuable. I found strength in my resilience, wisdom in my mistakes, and a peace I had never known before. I had been through hell, but I came out of it stronger, wiser, and ready to start over. I vowed to never let trust cloud my judgment again. I would be more cautious, more discerning, and I would never allow anyone to get that close again without proving their loyalty. But at the same time, I realized something else, the importance of forgiveness. Not just for others, for David, for the people who had betrayed me, but for myself. I had blamed myself for being duped, for not seeing the signs sooner, for being too trusting. But I had to let that go. Holding on to that anger, that guilt, wasn't going to help me move forward. I forgave myself. And in doing so, I freed myself from the weight of the past. As for David, well, the final twist came when I learned that his perfect life wasn't so perfect after all. The man who had once seemed so powerful, so in control, was now living a life of fear, unable to escape the consequences of his actions. His schemes had caught up with him, and the empire he thought he had built on my back was crumbling. He was no longer the confident, charming man I had once loved. He was a shadow of the person I had once trusted. Meanwhile, I had found peace. True peace this time. I had built my business from the ground up, with integrity, transparency, and trust, values that David had never understood. I had created a company that wasn't just profitable, but meaningful. And I was doing it on my terms, without the weight of anyone else's expectations or lies holding me back. The road had been long, and at times the journey seemed impossible. But here I was, standing tall, rebuilt, and ready to face whatever came next. No matter how low you fall, no matter how hard the world tries to break you, the journey to reclaim what's yours is always possible. And that's the power of starting over.